Hi everyone, my name's Jules Tush. I'm a speech pathologist of 17 years. The question was around dysregulation, what you can do when your child is feeling dysregulated, and basically what are the answers to that or some simple steps. So I recently did an in-service around this. So here's just some basics to think about. So when a child is dysregulated, it means their central nervous system is being inundated with a lot of input, and they are not feeling at their optimal arousal or focus levels, and they're actually flooded with hormones and cortisol and things that make them feel really uncomfortable, unable to, be themselves. So if you've been dysregulated, it's usually when you're tired, overwhelmed, stuck in traffic. Triggered is another one. So I guess the adult version is when you're triggered. Okay, so your brain kind of switches off parts that control. It's happening to me now. So the frontal parts of your brain will switch off, and you'll basically not be able to cope with certain things. So for children, it's a lot more prone to happen, especially if your child is neurodivergent, remembering they don't have a full frontal lobe yet. They don't have a full brain development. So it happens a lot quicker for a lot longer and a lot more often. So what can you do? Stay calm. I know that's so much harder, it's harder to actually do than a lot of people realize. And with practice, you can get really good at it. So you just really need to be aware how you're responding when your child melts down or gets overwhelmed or overstimulated. So a lot of parents will accidentally add to that. So they'll raise their voice, they'll try and fix things, and during that kind of flustered energy, they actually end up adding to their child's dysregulation. So stay calm. Use a lower, slower voice. So just like Chris Voss, when he talks about his negotiating tactics, it is research-based that the brain listens more to the DJ tone. The late night DJ, it's okay. They talk like Richard Mercer, or if you're in Australia. That does help calm anyone if you're just using that slower, lower tone. Okay. In fact, you can just kind of pull back the words altogether. If your child is having a meltdown, they would not really be able to listen or process what you're saying anyway. Okay. So just remember that. Just think of it as you're in a huge boat. Your child is in rough waters. They're struggling. They're scared. Just be the anchor. So you just want to hold that boat down. Obviously, I'm talking in a metaphor. You would never hold your child down unless they were really hurting themselves or at risk of hurting themselves or someone else. But generally speaking, if they're throwing and rolling around, that is very typical for a meltdown. Give them space. You're kind of wanting to keep the ocean as calm as possible. So when you're around them, be steady and strong. As a parent, your brain will probably be asking you to get triggered and move around and do something, because the screaming and the throwing, or even if they put an arm back and it clocks you in the head, is likely going to trigger your nervous system. So just be aware of that. As soon as you bring awareness to something, you're then able to have a bit more control over that. And I can certainly testify and say that with practice, you can be the calmest person when your child gets dysregulated, and lo and behold, that helps them come out of that meltdown quicker and even reduce them over time. So give it a go. Just staying present as much as you can. Walk away if you do need a break, or if you feel yourself getting overstimulated. I did a whole in-service about this, but basic things for parents to be aware of is their responses, their reactions, and helping not trying to pull a child away from the meltdown. I know that's counterintuitive because we want them to stop and we don't like seeing them struggling or in discomfort. It's really important to naturalize and normalize their emotions. Different if it's a complete tantrum, but we're talking about dysregulation. So let's imagine your child's been overwhelmed. It's time to put their shoes on and they're just so overwhelmed that it's a bit too complex, okay? Their brain's not processing those instructions and the coordination that it takes to do that. So they're on the floor, they're laying on their back and screaming. It's okay to give them a bit of space and maybe say something like, I know it can be very overwhelming. It can be quite tricky right now. So giving lots of pauses and breaks, crouching down, but not glaring at them like you're waiting for them to get over it, but kind of like if someone else comes up, advocating for them, like, oh, he's having a little bit of a hard time right now. When he's ready, we'll get those shoes on. You'll see your child will start to slow down. If you can also add an emotion to it, I know it's very frustrating. I understand you wanted to put them on and your shoes, they just didn't go on. That's very frustrating. And just even modeling like the deep breath, like the okay, again, we're not going to put instructions on that child. We're not going to say, take a deep breath or use your words, because that's just adding to the cognitive load and we're wanting to pull that right back. So if you do some good modeling there, I know taking a deep breath, sometimes subconsciously, the other person will just do it as well, or at least they can see that you're calm, and that makes a big difference to someone who's in meltdown or overwhelm. So that's just some tips there. When they do come out of it, you can sort of reassure them and say, yes, that was quite tricky. You wanted to put your shoes on and it didn't help. It didn't work. They fell off and that felt disappointing. Here we go. Sometimes that happens. Let's put your shoes on. Oh gosh. And you can even model that like, which is research-based to help process out some of those cortisol and other, hormone, like chemicals that they'll have floating through them that don't particularly feel good. If you do have a bit of time, maybe let's run to the car or let's run over here, or give them a crunchy snack, a bit of apple slice or a biscuit, something that can help bring them back into their body, feel regulated again. And just knowing that you're there and that you've helped them through that is it. So you've done it, just being there is the goal, and keeping that calm ocean, even if their boat is rocking quite a lot. Hopefully that metaphor falls on some people. If not, just staying in your own regulation and moving away if you do feel a bit dysregulated. Ask your partner or a friend who hasn't been triggered. They can usually step in and have a turn as well, just to be that calm energy. So keep asking me questions. I'm happy to answer them. And someone did ask me to do an emotional regulation talk, so I can look into that too.